Let us sit and talk of lore.
I wasn't sure that I was confused.
Porcupine Racetrack episode.
Considered one of the greatest games of all time.
He is a stone cold G.
Hard G. Hard G.
Nimbly bimbly.
This was a wildly popular show.
The real lore.
City of Heroes reference.
Oh, you're weird and whatever. And
Eyes Wide Shut orgy.
Gravitas.
it's The Witcher, broadcasting live from inside the power band. This is the Blah. In this episode, everybody dies via huge buckets of blood. I'm your host, Mulvey, along with my super awesome friends, Jarhigo.
Hello.
And Algorithm.
Fuck.
When there's a monster in your bog or woods, who you gonna call? That's right, folks. This week on the podcast, we're going to be talking about the super popular Netflix series, Toss a Coin to Your Witcher if you need a friend. The Witcher, also known as the Hair Witch Project. I wish I could claim all of that as my own, but Chad was unfortunate enough to send me the Honest Trailers trailer for this show, which we will definitely be linking in the show notes, because we definitely need to do more of promoting other channels that already have millions of viewers.
They make good stuff.
They do make great stuff. So we're going to we'll link up the Honest Trailers trailer for this show, which is quite humorous. At any rate, we're going to be talking about The Witcher, starring Henry Cavill, also known as the Man of Steel. And let's dive right in. Where do we want to go first, folks?
I think we should pretend that Ben was giving his top 5 entry again and do it again. Because you stopped yourself. You said, I really like The Witcher, and we'll talk about it more in a show one day. So here's your chance, my friend.
Yeah, well, we're all going to talk about it now.
Totally, bro.
Okay, so I played The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, which is a tremendous game. I highly recommend it. If you haven't heard of it, then, well, I don't know what to tell you. You're out of touch.
My hand's in the air.
So that was my end to this series. It wasn't the books or anything. It was just that one particular game. And lo and behold, I don't know, maybe a year or so later, I heard that they were working on a Netflix show, and myself and a coworker were kind of like, oh, that might be cool. And then we found out that Henry Cavill was going to play Geralt of Rivia, and that was it, man. I was like, whoa, he's perfect. That'll be great. So, yeah, that's it. It came out. I did watch it.
And it snuck under the door into your top 5 of 2019.
It did.
Because it came out really quite late. Is it December or something?
December 20th, 2019 was the release date.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I think I completed watching it just before Christmas. So, yeah, right under the door.
Yeah, speaking of Cavill, I mean, a slight bit of jumping around, but I saw that he, basically beat the door down to the showrunner to get this gig. He was all about it and a super huge Witcher fan, so that was really kind of cool to see that he was that pumped about it.
Yeah, he's a huge fan. He's a huge nerd. He is way, way into the game. So
yeah,
and we love nerds here on the podcast, folks. So there you go. Vin Diesel, Henry Cavill, they're friends of the show.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well put. Yes,
they're not. We're not their friends, but they're our friends. Just remember.
Right. It's a bit of a one-way street.
Yeah, I was just picturing Henry Cavill dressed as the Witcher, literally beating on the door of the producers of the show. I want to play the Witcher. Let me play the Witcher.
And in those 10 seconds, he said more than half of the dialogue that he has in the show.
There you go.
That's right.
Yeah, I don't gather he probably had to twist too many arms to get it.
I don't know though. I saw that he went to the showrunner. I forget her name. Should probably get Jimmy Google on it, but he went to her and she was like, "No thanks." And then she auditioned 270 other people, and then she kind of couldn't get his audition out of her head. So they really did try and find somebody else, but I'm glad they ended up coming back to him.
Interesting.
Yeah.
They were just like, well, he's a total hunk, and he's built like a brick shit house, and he just plays Superman. Yeah. All right, yeah, let's just use him.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, maybe they wanted to avoid having somebody quite so familiar.
Maybe. Yeah.
But, I think it's lended the show quite a bit of weight, credibility. I don't know. How would you put it? But you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
No, all those things are right. Yeah.
On a slight tangent in the high level universe, gravitas. Are you guys generally like fantasy heads? Are you into fantasy in general? Fantasy novels, fantasy media?
No.
I dabble in fantasy. I find that I live in a world that is oversaturated with fantasy, and there's so much of it. I typically resist it. I'm definitely always been more of a sci-fi fan.
Mm-hmm.
So I like it, but I don't like everything that comes along.
Yeah,
to be sure.
I very, very much echo what Ben just said. There was a review of City of Heroes years ago, and it said basically that it was a breath of fresh air in a oversaturated sword and sandal genre, talking about MMO games. And that very much sums up how I feel about fantasy in general. It's just so oversaturated, man. And unlike science fiction, I feel, and I could be wrong about this, so many of the concepts and the stories, they mirror each other too closely. There's so many things that are in so many fantasy games and movies and TV series and books and all of that stuff. So you don't get as much variety, in my opinion. Whereas opposed like science fiction, you can go from something like Blade Runner to Dune, and it's vastly, vastly different.
Well, Kev, there are only so many mythical creatures to go around.
That's it.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
I'm sure, like I'm kind of the same, where I am not a huge fantasy head, but I imagine because we're somewhat underexposed to the genre in terms of stuff we've consumed, maybe it's like if you were to go deep dive, you'd find that breadth, but I just don't find it as interesting as the sci-fi, similar to what you're saying.
Yeah, no, neither do I. And I, like Ben said, I dabble. It's like the Lord of the Rings is sort of the progenitor of all of this stuff, I think, anyway. And it's like everybody's read that. You have to read it. Even if you're not into any of this stuff, you have to read it. But it's like beyond that, I won't get into it unless somebody I know suggests it, or recommends it, or I see something that piques my interest. And this definitely piqued my interest because, Ben recommended it wholeheartedly, and Henry Cavill's in it, and I had I was curious about the game. Like, I read a lot of press when it came out, and it looked really interesting, and I was like, maybe I'll try something like that, because I had played Shadow of Mordor on the PS3, and I found that pretty enjoyable. That was a really great game, and this game, as a matter of fact, has now become, as I told Chad a couple weeks ago, is considered one of the greatest games of all time. So that's a pretty big title to be carrying for a game. And I actually would like to go back and play Witcher 3 Wild Hunt when I have 5 minutes in my life, which I don't. But
you're gonna need a little more than 5 minutes, bud.
Exactly. I'm going to need a little more than 5 minutes. But I'm definitely curious. I did a lot of reading about this series. I didn't realize it was based on books. I thought that the series was just coming off the games. And the lore there was very cool, man. And there was a lot of different things going on, as we kind of often get, I think, from a lot of like the Slavic countries like Poland and Russia and so forth. So very, very cool. And when I say that, I'm also speaking of the Nightwatch series, which I discovered years ago. Ben and I watched a couple of those films, and those are adapted from books as well. Very cool, interesting, different take on magic. So, eventually we need to talk about those films or books, but very cool, different, interesting stuff. So if it's like that, then I'll get into it. But my long-winded sort of wrap-up is, yeah, not a huge fantasy fan.
I think as far as like watching the actual show goes for me, I'm finding that one of the things I really like about doing the show with you guys is that something that I would dismiss kind of out of hand or maybe even skip, I'm finding that now I'm kind of watching these things, paying closer attention and thinking a lot more about them. So I've definitely found that I'm appreciating stuff a lot more. And I think even, appreciating things more for what they are. So similar to kind of advice that you've given in the past, Ben. So, yeah, I enjoyed the show. I enjoyed the mythology stuff, which you touched on a second ago, Kev, with the Slavic, Celtic kind of mythologies. And it kind of like picked up steam for me once some of the twists started happening, and enjoyed the timeline kind of flip around stuff. It kept me interested. So it was quite unexpected. I guess a slightly different way to say it is I didn't know what to expect because I'd never heard of it ever and kind of haven't played games in a long time just because I haven't had access, and it just completely missed me. So it was an interesting recommendation when you gave it back with the top 5 episode, and it's an interesting kind of opening salvo in a series that's probably going to have a bunch of different seasons now that the fans have picked it up.
Oh, and they have.
Mm.
What's really funny is apparently like The Witcher 3, ended up selling possibly even more than they had previous. I mean, it's always been a great selling game, but once this came out, like Steam sales of The Witcher 3 fucking exploded.
Really?
Yeah.
I was on the Witcher subreddit today just having a poke around, and one of the top posts was like a photo of this dude. This dude took a picture of his mom sitting at the console being like, my mom wanted to play Witcher 3 after watching the show, and it's just like this like legit old school mom just like cranking out the Witcher game, which I thought was pretty awesome.
Wow. I mean, that's pretty powerful, man. If you can crank out a show that's going to make, moms between the ages of 50 and 75 dial in some Xbox One sessions of The Witcher 3, you're doing something right, man.
Lauren Schmidt is the showrunner, by the way. Just wanted to throw that out there.
So let's talk about somewhat of the lore. But before that, I want to talk about the inspiration for the series in terms of where it takes from the books, and along with that, my one single gripe with this show. So this show pulls from the 2 collections of short stories that preclude the main Witcher saga.
Okay.
And that would be The Last Wish and The Sword of Destiny. So that is where they pulled the stories from. I did a lot of reading about the game, and I don't remember exactly where the game pulls from, but my one and only gripe from this show, I mean, the irony of what I'm about to say is astounding to me because it's something that Ben has mentioned numerous times with quite a bit of passion, and that would be time jumping.
Right.
And my only gripe, as I said to Chad in a conversation like a week and a half ago, is the time jumping in the show is so utterly jarring that I just, like, I was lost until I started reading about the show, the books, and the video game, and realized that, like, I literally went into Wikipedia and was going episode by episode, and in the Wikipedia description of the episodes, it was saying, well, the first part starts in X year, and then the second part is in Y year, and
it's like 30 years difference
really,
or something.
Yeah, it is, and it's really, really difficult to tell that when you're watching the show. I mean, we all watched the honest trailer of this morning, this evening, whatever. And one of the things that he says in it is something to the effect of, you won't know where you are because none of the characters really age in the show. And that's the other problem with it, is that everybody kind of looks the same. So when the time jumping's going on, it's so seamless. You just feel like, the story's moving along and you're not realizing that there's any time jumping going on. And if they had simply just put the date in the corner of the screen, it would have made a humongous difference. And I think it's probably the single thing that this show has working against it. because it's way too confusing. Ben's always talked about how annoying time jumping is, and I remember when you were talking about that and just thinking like, oh, that doesn't really bother me that much. I wonder why it bugs him so badly. I get it, dude. I get it. Because this was the most egregious example of that. And it really blows because the show is really good, but it makes it really difficult to follow along with what's going on.
Rant over.
Rant complete.
What was your take on that, Benny?
Yeah, I agree. I wasn't sure that I was confused until certain things started happening, and then I was like, "What the fuck is going on?" But I kind of knew they were switching timelines because the introduction of Yennefer's sort of origin story. I knew that was like further behind than some of the other stuff they had already done. So I knew something was afoot, but I was definitely a little confused, and it wasn't. I honestly didn't put anything. I didn't put everything together that I was confused about until I watched it the second time.
Oh, okay.
And then it made sense.
Right.
So I was just on my first viewing. I was just kind of along for the ride, but I mean, I was still really enjoying it. But yeah, I understand that the way they approached the time jumping was kind of jankety, I think. And especially like you said, the the honest trailers thing where they're like, yeah, and half the characters don't age, so you can't tell like what's going on. You really can't,
No, and there's definitely, like Chad said, some 30-year time jumps in there.
Yeah, at least 30 years.
Yeah, it's almost as if like they put it together for people that were really familiar with the story and really familiar with the books.
Yeah, maybe.
I feel like they probably had no trouble with any of this stuff, but the rest of us schmucks were kind of lost.
I do enjoy how often I am the contrarian to whatever you two say, but like the time jumping was my favorite part of the show. So,
God, you are such a dick. I love it.
But I didn't really pick up on it similarly. And I liked your point a second ago, Benny, of like maybe it was targeting people who were familiar with the stuff, but I hadn't thought of that until just now. But the Yennefer becoming a mage, and then the scene in the Porcupine Racetrack episode where she's in the carriage with her, the mistress of the kingdom with the baby, and like the assassin comes in just before the assassin with the weird cockroach thing kills everybody. She says like, I've been doing this for 30 years and this sucks. And so as soon as she said that, my ears pricked up and I was like, 30 years. Oh, I see. They're all jumping around all over the fucking place. Nimbly bimbly. So that was kind of when I picked it up. And then as soon as I kind of clued into it, I started really paying attention to, the way it was woven together. So maybe that's why I enjoyed it more, but
yeah.
I mean, I enjoyed it. I guess I'm just I'm in the middle here. So I'm saying like I did enjoy it, but I can see where Kev was coming from.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I can't see where you're coming from because I thought it was fucking great.
It wasn't unenjoyable. I was thoroughly enjoying what I was watching, and I probably would have just blissfully continued on watching, but I was definitely confused. Ben, I think Chad was watching this, and he was like, I love this. This is perfect. This will be the opposite of what Jarhigo and Mulvey like about the show. So just to give everybody an example of what I'm talking about, episode 1, straight off the bang in the description, it's 12:31. Then later on the episode, it's 12:63. Episode 2 starts in 12:06. Episode 3 starts in 12:10. Episode 2 also jumps back to 12:63. So, I mean, there's a lot of time jumping just in the first 2 episodes,
Yeah, I get it. I do get it. At the same time, like on the like graphics thing, I don't remember where I heard it first, but it was kind of like the old, curmudgeon filmmaker thing of like, if you need a narrator, your writing sucks. And like, there's people out there that say if you need fucking place and time graphics, your writing sucks. And I kind of am in that camp a little bit. Like, I enjoy how I'm gonna die. The original Star Wars trilogy doesn't say Hoth and Tatooine.
Dead.
But then the later movies have to say everywhere that everyone's going, you know what I mean? So I kind of like it when they don't tell you what's up.
Yeah, yeah. Well, no, I mean, look, I totally agree with you, man, and that's a really great point because that is always the issue. It's like when you start having to splash a bunch of exposition up on the screen to explain what's going on, it's like, yeah, you're doing something wrong.
It's risky. It's not even that it's wrong. It's just you risk it being stupid. You risk it being stupid.
Yeah. It's going to turn some people off for sure.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, especially when nothing's changing with the characters except Geralt's current hairstyle.
Geralt.
Geralt's current hairstyle.
We have the second death, everybody.
It's a hard G.
Hard G. It's a hard G, Kev.
You know what, Ben?
Yes?
Geralt is a hard G. He is a stone cold G. Should do a hip hop remix of the "Throw a Coin to Your Witcher" song.
Oh man,
I would love a little skit of Geralt of Rivia at the salon or a barbershop. It'd be pretty good.
You know what's really funny is in Witcher 3: The Wild Hunt, you more or less look exactly the same through the entire game until you get to a certain city where there is a barber.
No shit.
And then you can go in and like change his hair,
serious?
or give him like different facial hair. Yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah. So yeah, my Geralt had kind of like a not a mohawk, but like, you know, the Metallica like shaved side top knot kind of doohickey, and then and he had a big mustache. Yep.
Of course.
I love how just a smack talk session about a perm or whatever gets us into actual game lore. That's fantastic.
That's why I'm here, folks.
That's it. Really, the real lore.
Are we done with the bitching about the timeline thread, or
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay?
Let us sit and talk of lore.
Gather around the fire. Yeah, you mentioned the Celtic mythology stuff and the Slavic mythology stuff, and I wouldn't say that I have a ton of, you know, education on mythologies in general, but I've always been fascinated by mythology.
Same.
And I enjoyed the use of it here, and I suppose I hadn't realized how many of the fairy tale like things that were sprinkled in this were mythological in source, but it makes perfect sense, you know. So it was kind of the other major, you know, thing that I was stoked about as the show unfolded.
Was how much it drew from actual mythology, you mean?
Yeah, and then, you know, you get to like the Porcupine episode, for example, and you're just like, you know, what is it, fucking Cinderella, Snow White? Which one is it? Did they kiss the fucking frog prince or whatever the fuck it was? You kiss the frog and it turns into a prince, and so it's like, seriously, they're doing that? And then you're like, actually, this is probably, you know, the frog princey kind of thing is probably drawn from a super old school mythological thing, so that kind of makes sense. And I was like, all right, yeah, I get it, and was more on board, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no. I'm with you. I feel you. I mean, I think what's cool to me is that the books, and then in turn the game and the series, have drawn from Polish mythology, which is, again, like I said earlier, you know, it's just different. There's just some different concepts in there that I dig, and the way things are arranged is different than European, North American mythology. So
Greek or whatever.
Yeah, or Greek or whatever. So I like how it's just got a different take and a different kind of twist and spin on it that I dig.
Yeah.
You know, just the idea of the Witcher himself is a cool concept, you know.
There you go. The idea of witchers and yeah, I mean, you're encountering a lot of similar things that you would in any other fantasy. You know, I mean, there's still elves and dwarves and, you know, what have you, dragons, etc. But there's definitely a flavor and overtone to the storytelling and how everything is approached that is, you know, refreshingly different. And I think it is the basis of like the Slavic mythology that really brings that to the forefront.
Definitely.
Yeah, exactly.
And, you know, on your comment earlier about Tolkien being one of the key, you know, fantasy pieces in terms of Lord of the Rings, you know, he was an obsessive linguist and an obsessive, you know, academic in the mythologies and stuff, and, you know, Beowulf and stuff like that. So it kind of makes sense that the fantasy genre came out of essentially like old school oral mythological traditions and stuff. So it's no surprise that this is pulling from it, but I suppose I hadn't really encountered the Slavic side of it, and so it was somewhat fresh for me. Kind of like how some of the Norse mythology stuff is fresh for me, just because I don't have a ton of exposure to a lot of it.
Totally. Yeah, I feel the same way about the Norse mythology as well. I just don't know a ton about it, you know? And I think, like, I don't know, in my younger days, mythology was kind of like, I don't know, I kind of dug it, but I kind of was like, Science fiction seems so much cooler.
Yeah.
And then I think as an adult, at this point, I'm like, all these mythologies are the same and they're all aliens. So let's move on. So yeah, sort of riffing off that idea of, the Slavic, the Polish mythology being, different and cool. There's a vast amount of lore in these books that the author, who is Andrzej
Sapkowski.
Andrzej Sapkowski, has put in there. I mean, really, this bit of the series is only based on a couple of short stories from, like I said, Last Wish and The Sword of Destiny. We haven't even gotten into the main Witcher saga yet. So from that vantage point, I'm really curious to see what they do with this. I mean, this was a wildly popular show, like out of nowhere too.
And critically panned as well. So the fact that the fans are making them all look like asshats as usual, I suppose, is going to really drive the studio to put more of these out, I think. Yeah.
So far, it seems that they're dipping into these short stories to just get the band together. As lost as I was kind of like, well, all right, I know what's going on here. Like, this is before like Ciri meets Geralt, so I know they're going to meet up because I know where the story is going. So it's all heading to that point, really. But how is it going to unfold? Because I didn't know any of that part of the story. So that's really, it's definitely getting the band together kind of season. Yeah.
That's interesting that you say that. It makes me think of a couple of things. It makes me think of the right way to tell a story, as in, like, this is kind of the prequel trilogy to the, episode 4, 5, 6 Star Wars kind of thing, where, like, you're actually doing the prequel stuff first to get everybody stoked and then unfolding the story, which is an interesting, like, it's kind of things that we've complained about in the Star Wars universe, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And it also made me think of the Fellowship of the Ring, which essentially the whole book is like the gathering of the Fellowship, and then the story kind of unfolds from there. So it's a smart way to do it, because, like you said, it doesn't need to be the most plot-driven thing in the world. It's just like a sprinkling of stories to get everyone, bit of foreplay. Everyone's stoked now. Let's see where it goes next, kind of thing.
Yeah, well put. It's an appetizer.
Yeah, I suppose I had thought throughout that I was watching the main event, but it's great to hear that it's not, and it's great to hear they've got a lot more to draw from.
No, it's part like getting the band together, and there definitely are some origin stories.
Yeah,
it's kind of a origin story for Ciri, and it's definitely they go through Yennefer's origin story, which I never knew about, so that was interesting to see. And they touch on Geralt a little bit, but not so much. You get kind of a little idea of him being a little kid and his mother abandoning him. So
yeah, I was definitely into seeing that in the last episode. That kind of like get a little taste of where he came from.
Mm-hmm.
It fleshed him out a little bit, because he was, the strong, silent, brooding hero thing. So it was kind of cool to see a bit of history there, especially history with him in a vulnerable place as a kid or whatever.
Absolutely. But at the same time, a good mysterious character that we just slowly get little drips about over the course of an entire series is also great,
Mm-hmm.
Because as we talked about so many times, it's like it just leaves you wanting for more, man. It's like, we want to know more. It's like, okay, we'll give you another drop.
I kind of like how comedically, they gave away Geralt's story through the bard, in the sense that, like, he just talks to his fucking horse and doesn't really talk to anybody, but the other dude's just running around in fucking pubs singing songs, and it's just, I don't know, like, at the time and when it first happened, I was like, oh my god, bard, fuck off. But looking back on it, I'm kind of like, it's a great kind of foil to Witcher's strong silent type.
Yeah, Jaskier's in the band, man. He's an important.
He's definitely in the band. He's the fucking keyboardist in the band, but he's in the band.
I don't know if it's incredibly clear in the series, but Geralt, was known as the Butcher of Blaviken, and it was a very bad reputation, and people were, he definitely had a bad rep, and it really was Jaskier who was kind of like his PR guy and like turned people's turned it around for him. So
That's interesting.
like you see it in the show, but I don't know if it's extremely clear that that's like what's going on.
No, for me, who hasn't seen or heard anything about this, it wasn't, the butcher part wasn't clear. Like, my takeaway was similar, where like in the opening episode, they're like, we don't serve your kind around here. So I just thought that all witchers were treated like shit, and then the bard turns it around. But same in terms of if it's the butcher reputation that got him that treatment, the same result of the bard sorting him out.
One of the questions that I had mainly for Ben was, is the game populated by, and I mean, you don't know because you haven't read the books, but are both of those things populated by the same kind of language and humor?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. It's played out, at least, I mean, I haven't played all of the Witcher games, but at least in terms of how Witcher 3 is presented, the characters are very much the same. You know, Geralt is very much the same. Yennefer is very much the same. You know, Jaskier is, they call him Dandelion in the game, but he is pretty the same guy, you know. So, I mean, they look different, you know, the art direction and how the character design is a little different, but they're essentially the same. And there's the same kind of, you know, dry humor and wit and that sort of thing in the game. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. Sorry. No, the reason why I brought that up was because in episode 5, which was my least favorite episode out of all of them, it's the one with the djinn. I just, you know, the language was kind of and the humor, it was starting to sound a little too contemporary, and I don't know what it is that just really bothers me, man, a lot. Like it sort of pulls me out of a world, and I don't really care for it, but knowing that that's how it is in the game and probably the books as well, makes it different for me in my mind. So, you know, when we talked about the rise of Papa Palpatine, I couldn't stand the dialogue and the quippy, contemporary, familiar way they were all speaking. You know, I wanted it to be like it was in really the other 6 films. You know, it just ruined it. I mean, well, a lot of things ruined that movie, but that was a big one for me. So when it started happening in The Witcher, I was kind of like, that's kind of bumming me out. So
Do you have any particular examples or?
there's just an exchange around the time that the castle is getting destroyed, you know, when the Yennefer's trying to get the djinn to make her womb whole again. And
Right.
There's just a couple of lines in there between the bard and Geralt that just made me feel like, I was like, God, this is sounding a little contemporary. I wonder, in my mind, I was like, I wonder if the books in the game are like this. Because if they are, that's fine. They're staying true to the material. And if they're not, then I will be striking this series down with my nerd hammer because it is no good and not worthy. Sort of where I was in my head.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I can speak to that specific example being, you know, 100% on point, but you know, I think for the most part throughout the series, it was pretty on point.
Then I deem this series worthy of my viewing.
Roger that.
I love how you guys are like, yeah, okay.
Okay, bro.
No, I'm fine with it. That's how I felt when I started watching it. And I was like, I just made a mental note. I was like, I got to ask Ben about this. Because if it's, you know, like I said, if it's true to the material, then great. So be it. And if it's not.
This is potentially a worthy cul-de-sac where I'm finding a lot of TV, quote unquote TV, frustrating at times. And I'm starting to feel like my frustrations are because of the shared directing. Where, like, on one hand, it's kind of cool that directors are being given chances to do episodes or one-offs or a couple of episodes of a series. But on the other hand, you know, one of the directors on episodes 1, 2, 3 of a show does an awesome job, and then the rest of the season isn't as good. I just kind of feel like I'd sometimes rather have just one director do the whole show. And whether that's relevant or not to this particular writing or directing or whatnot, I don't know. But it wouldn't surprise me if that played a part, because that that episode had a different writer and a different director to a lot of the other episodes. So
Interesting. I didn't even really think about that.
and I mention it specifically because we've been talking about, whether or not we want to prioritize talking about devs, and it's a mini series all of them are directed by Alex Garland. So like it's kind of one of the few examples of a multi-episode show that's all directed by the one person that I can think of. So don't know, like segue over, but it was just kind of an interesting thought, or a cul-de-sac over.
Well, I'm going to stay with this cul-de-sac for a second and just say that one thing that, like, I don't mind if shows are directed by other people. I think it's great. You know what I mean? You get
I can see the benefit.
A little bit of a different interpretation. They can put their own flavor on it, and that's great. I'm a huge fan of creatives, man. What am I going to say? Like, I'm all for giving people shots and seeing different spins on stuff and all of that sort of thing, while at the same time them sticking true to the material and the vibe of the show and all of that sort of thing. This show, episodes 1 and 2, were directed by one person, and then 3 and 4 were directed by somebody else. And then the episode in question that I brought up, Charlotte Brandstrom directed 5 and 6, and 6 was a great episode. So,
well, 6 also had a very similar feeling to 5. Like the dragon episode, I thought was quite.
Yeah, you're right.
I don't know, for lack of a better word, like this is not meaning to be disrespectful. Like the first word that came to mind when you were talking about the dialogue being contemporary is kind of like, poppy, like pop music. So like,
yes, exactly.
Trying to be accessible via, conforming to the popular tropes of the time. And both of those episodes had kind of a poppy feeling to them. Not that I disliked them, but
yeah, I guess they did. I mean, I feel like we're kind of going too deep into this. Well, whatever. I mean, it is what it is. I really just meant like a couple of lines were starting to feel like it was contemporary, and it wasn't that it was like from that point on, it was all sounding too poppy and it just started ruining it for me. It wasn't like that at all. It just made me raise an eyebrow.
Yeah. Something that jumped out at you.
Yeah, and when I say that episode 5 wasn't my favorite one, it definitely was my least favorite one. I don't know why. I didn't like the way the story rolled, I don't know. It just seemed a little, as Ben would love to say, jankety, and I don't know. It was just a bit weird. But I enjoyed the dragon episode a lot. I especially liked it because Ron Cook was in it, and I thought he was fantastic as the team leader that tries to recruit Geralt and also the Golden Dragon. I thought that was fantastic. I mean, that was a good episode. I'm sitting there editing Cobra, right? And I get to the Joe Fowler part, Kev's lifelong dream, you guys making fun of me, and what do? I start watching Joe Fowler videos again for like 45 minutes.
I want to take this opportunity to turn this into a mid-roll.
Joe Fowler videos again. Joe Fowler videos again. Joe Fowler. Joe Fowler. Joe Fowler.
Hi, Joe Fowler here. Joe Fowler here. Joe Fowler here. Joe Fowler here. Joe Fowler
here. Folks, please share this podcast with a friend, because if we can monetize this enough, Kev can quit his day job and just watch Joe Fowler videos full time with his new career as a wannabe infomercial star.
And that'll be great because it'll curb him from doing it in the middle of the podcast while we're recording.
He can have his own spin-off podcast, which is just infomercials.
I am looking for my son.
Hi, Joe Fowler.
Aha!
Aha!
Hi, Joe Fowler.
You too can help people like Kevin by donating to our podcast now. You too could save podcasts.
Are we talking about episodes now?
Yeah, I think it would be a good transition to talk about episodes. I'd like to kick off the episode talk with how fucking pumped I was with that end fight sequence in the first episode.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to bring up the same exact thing because
That was so
Yeah.
fucking fantastic.
it was one of the best, man.
I really liked that fight sequence and didn't really find that same level of maybe shooting style choreography as the show unfolded, and I thought they were all going to be like that, but man, that one was really good.
I agree. Man, your thoughts were exactly like mine. I saw that fight scene and was like, wow, this is awesome. That was one of the best choreographed shot fight scenes I've seen in a good little bit, you know?
Outside of a Wick movie.
Yep.
Yeah, the Wick ones were notable, man. They were really, really good. Those guys get it. And we've talked about this many times before. I'm never going to stop talking about it because I've studied martial arts and it really bothers the hell out of me.
I know Kung Fu.
Yeah. But but you know that fight scene was just beautifully shot. You could see everything. It was like he just picked the perfect angles, the perfect shots, and it was really, really good. And I was like, okay, so that's the bar, and that's what we get to see in this show. And then every other fight scene was pretty vanilla compared to that. And I was definitely bummed. I was bummed out by that. I wasn't disappointed. I was just bummed out.
I don't know what happened, but
Well, different director, man.
Yeah.
You know, you got same director on the first two, ditto on the second two, ditto on the next two, and then on the end. And it's like they're going to do the fight scenes differently. And, you know, it was upsetting. I will say that there was battle scenes. Actually, no, that was in the first episode too. That major battle scene when the king of Sintra gets the arrow in the eye. Like that battle scene was really good. But again, same director. I mean, it was gory and really brutal, man. I really thought it showed the brutality of living in a time. I know this is a fantasy series, but you know, the brutality of living in that kind of time, similar to Game of Thrones, you know, particularly when that one soldier just gets a freaking axe to the head right through his helmet. I was like, God damn, dude, that is so intense, man. You know, so it was, I really, really enjoyed it. That first director, now I got to look him up. Alex Sakharov was the guy that directed episodes 1 and 2. And he definitely gets it because those fight sequences were fantastic. And bummed I was that they weren't like that throughout the rest of the series. Done.
Yeah, same.
Benny, thoughts on that?
Just that I remember seeing an interview with Henry Cavill, and he was going through like the massive amount of training he'd had to do for those sword fighting sequences. And I wonder if like, you know, for that particular episode, they really wanted like a really well shot sequence to sort of establish what a badass Geralt is with a sword. And that was one of the ones that he had trained really hard for and worked with a choreographer, and they did the whole thing. And then the rest of them, like, they chose to just focus on other things, or maybe that happened. Like the filming of it was more towards the end when his training was more
maybe
ready, or, yeah. But I feel like we're going to get some more of that, as the series continues for sure.
Well, I hope so, man, because those first 2 episodes, it was fantastic.
Yeah. Excellent fight sequence.
Yeah, and maybe that's a good segue with the same director directing the second one, because the second one was quite a departure from kind of the establishment of the first episode, with kind of major focus being Yennefer and her backstory, which was quite cool.
Yeah, that was a big one for me, man. And the backstory on that is, so when I played The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, it more or less opens up with like, if memory serves, like Geralt in a bathtub, and Yennefer is just fucking handpecking the hell out of him and nagging him. And that was my introduction to Yen. I was just like, you know what? To hell with her, man. So like, as soon as I could ditch her, I ditched her. And then I ended up like, I wasn't even interested in like the romance aspect of the game, but I ended up hooking up with Triss Marigold just to sort of piss Yen off. but
it's interesting hearing him say this like this. Yeah.
But then like later in the game, you have to do like a quest with Yennefer, and afterwards you're talking to her, and she's like, and the game is really great with the dialogue trees, and the cutscenes are amazing. But, she's like, oh, after all these years, like, it's amazing to think that I still feel the same way that I do for you, that I did all those years ago, whatever. And more or less at that point, you have to break up with Yennefer. And it's like, you're like, you tell her like, I'm sorry, the magic's gone yet. And she's like, he doesn't really say it, but you can tell she's like wounded, and I felt terrible. And then like when I saw this episode and I didn't know like anything about her background. So when I saw this episode, like I have like this strange outpouring of emotion for her, like I really felt for her. And I was like, oh man, I wish I hadn't treated her like shit.
That's amazing.
So
when people get too involved in video games, next on the EBD.
That's super interesting though, because I mean, it's not often that the audience has a history with a character in terms of interaction. Like the video game nature of it is very rare that you would actually have had like literally a video game relationship with this person, so that when you're watching this backstory, you're like, wow, she's been through some shit, man.
Yeah.
I guess like, in that space, the fact that Witcher could have interesting storytelling, despite, I mean, obviously it's based on books, so it's a little bit easier than, a new creation of a game. But I like what you, or I thought it was quite interesting what you were saying, Ben, in terms of your appreciation for Yen's backstory in the second episode, but hadn't really thought about it from the context of the game. Because, like, I suppose for me, not having any backstory on it at all, I found her being, a hunchback or whatever, who was just, like, sold off by her dad.
Yeah.
It was so cold, and then she goes and she's in freaking Hogwarts getting trained up, and it's an interesting story.
No, the second episode was incredible, and it's a real testament to the quality of the acting, again. Anya Chalotra. She's the actress that plays Yennefer. I mean, my God, man, like Piglet, between her portrayal and the makeup used, I was just like, wow, this is sick. I mean, it was incredible.
It's pretty good.
Oh,
man.
It was really, really good, man. She just dialed it in. And I mean, you can really see that even more so after the transformation, when she turns into this gorgeous raven-haired goddess, like it's it was really, really good. And that was one of my favorite parts of it, was just her story and the actress's portrayal in that particular episode. I thought it was top notch.
Old boy.
Yeah, what a portrayal, man. She really she made me fall for the character,
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah.
But Ben, if just to riff off of that, like what's great is that you do, and I felt the same way. I really felt for her, and I felt for her. I was like, wow, your dad just sells you like that, and then they're calling her Piglet, and she's in Hogwarts, and everybody's like, oh, you're weird and whatever, and then when she turns into the goddess, she's very different, man, almost to the point of being, kind of like what you were saying about the game a minute ago. I was kind of like, I don't really like her anymore. You know what I mean? She lost her that quality when she transformed. She was like such an underdog, and you were rooting for her, and then she transforms into this goddess, and she's just like, meh, I can't be bothered with you now. It's like,
yes.
She has a little bit of that going on. So but again, I thought that was one of the cool, parts of the show and portrayal by Anya of that character. So there you go.
The beauty there is that, it's clearly her persona, once she changes, is like, she's trying to put up a wall around herself and protect herself. And it's like a projection or a caricature of, what she wants to be. But on the inside, she's still, the girl in the pig pen kind of, like that's still at work at her. And, despite the fact that she's kind of callous and, she has like a soft inside, she's sensitive and, she's vulnerable. And that was something that, encountering her in the game, I had no idea about that. And then when I encountered her in the series, that's like, it really got me. I was like, oh man, I feel really terrible now.
Yeah.
Well,
and later in the later in the series when she gets kind of knocked down and then she goes back to the her original kind of hookup from the cave or whatever, and he shoots her down on that kind of archaeological site. You definitely get the pick up the pieces thing from her. She's like, I have no idea what I want from the world, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah.
Really good stuff there. And that somewhat continues into episode 3. And I just wanted to talk about that episode for a second, saying that I think my favorite part of that episode was just the creatures are very interesting and cool. And, in this particular episode, I really liked the whole concept with the curse and the princess that had turned into this horrible creature. I just really dug that. I thought that was a really interesting story.
The Striga.
That's what made me love. Yeah, that's what made me love the episode 3.
More of that dark fairy tale kind of
story. And then how he broke the curse with the daylight. It was great. Really, really cool.
Yeah, evidently, I was just checking some stuff out about some of the mythology stuff, and evidently, like almost all of the creatures in this come from some of the mythology stuff that we spoke about earlier, but the Striga in this one is thought to be the origin of vampires, so like old oral tradition that might be one of the sources for it, which I thought was kind of interesting, which kind of makes sense with the daylight thing and a lot of the various elements of it, but it's like a proto-vampire.
Very interesting.
Well, on that particular story, I'm with you all the way with everything you said, Kev, but I also liked the idea of kind of like the isolated kingdom, like the leader is keeping everyone out, and so instead of it being like all the warring states, all the different groups fighting against each other, this one kingdom's just like closed their borders and they've got all their own problems, and the miners are revolting and all this kind of stuff. And I thought it was a kind of a cool thing that kind of reminded me of some of the stuff from like Lone Wolf and Cub with, the complexities of these non-unified governments and stuff was kind of cool. And so like,
yeah, sort of kind of nation state action.
Yeah. Yeah. And it or the city state thing and kind of some of our actual history. And then you mix in,
that's what I meant. City state. Yeah.
Yeah. And you mix in like the king who's, got his own hang-ups, and it turns out that it was the mage or whatever. I don't really remember the story overly well, but it was a cool encapsulated story.
Yeah, definitely. I dug that too. I like that whole thing, and a lot of that seemed designed to protect the scandal, which was the other part of that episode that was pretty cool. Of the
yes.
Yeah, exactly. The scandal surrounding the curse. He was just trying to protect that so vehemently, that he had closed the borders and all of that stuff. So, yeah.
Destroy his own kingdom, yeah. And then, we get to the Porcupine Racetrack episode, which was kind of a big hitter.
Big hitter. Love that episode.
And I keep saying Porcupine Racetrack because it was a great skit from the state back in the day, which no one's probably gotten, but I think it's funny.
I did not pick up on that.
It's a great musical ensemble, but interesting episode.
Yeah, I really enjoyed learning that Mousak and Geralt had known each other forever in that episode, and that was part of where my confusion started, as I mentioned in the beginning of the episode. But that was a good episode. There's some funny moments with the bard, dragging him to the banquet, and then some cool fight scenes as well, and just some good lore there as well. The whole, again, the idea of the curse and breaking the curse and the law of surprise being introduced, and all that stuff. I found very interesting. That's my short and sweet on 4.
And the strong queen. I liked the strong queen character.
Yes.
And she just they really, really showed her flexing her royal muscle there, and I dug that a lot. I mean, I think we're all big fans of strong female characters. We've talked about it certainly numerous times on the show, Miyazaki, whatever, and she's a great example of that, man. And she's like damn scary, man. And in terms of her resolve and her sort of ruthlessness. Not that she's terribly ruthless, but
she knows what she wants. And, well, maybe she knows what she wants to protect, and she doesn't hold back protecting.
Yeah, she's resolute, and you could see that she could be ruthless if she, things don't go the way she wants. But at the same time, as something was presented to her she's not so one-track minded that she wouldn't listen and then, change her mind, which, makes for a dynamic character, a multifaceted character.
There's a lot of good Geralt stuff at that banquet. Like the complaint is that Geralt is kind of one-dimensional and you don't really hear him say anything. And this is one that you get to you get a little sample of what he's like. He's definitely a man of few words, but he's smart and he's got some wit. He doesn't need a lot. He doesn't need to say a lot to get his point across. So I think there's some great spots in this episode that kind of showcase that. Yeah.
Whoa.
Definitely.
The Jinx machine is out of order. Please insert another quarter.
The Law of Surprise stuff was interesting. I had never heard of it before,
Yes. Nor I.
And definitely pulled in everybody Kev's and was like, I need to look this up, and checked it out a bit. It was quite cool.
Everybody Kev's.
I didn't realize that it was like tied up with the kid thing. Like I kind of just thought like, okay, Law of Surprise, like you get whatever random thing, but like
you get a random present.
Well, because Geralt says it in the end of that episode where he's like, whatever, we'll do Law of Surprise. Maybe you get a good harvest or some shit. And then the girl pukes and is pregnant, and you're like, oh, never mind. But I didn't realize just how much it was like taking care of the of a child, and ownership of a child thing was one of the primary historical kind of references to the Law of Surprise. So it was all news to me and quite cool.
Yeah, quite cool. And it was also sort of the genesis. I mean, of course, we don't know that because they're way back in time at the banquet. But, as we come to find out later, that was sort of the genesis of the whole destiny with Ciri. And that was something else that they talked about in relation to the Law of Surprise in that episode that was really interesting and cool, was just talking about destiny in general, and what does it mean, and do you believe it? Do you not believe it? Like that I really enjoyed the way they handled that.
Especially the destiny not being just kind of like a philosophical thing. Like, Queen Calanthe's like, nope. And then the whole freaking room goes crazy and people are flying around the place. And, in this world, you mess with destiny and some shit goes down instead of it just being like, oh, yeah, whatever.
Psychic tornado,
yeah,
bro.
Exactly.
Mess with destiny, psychic tornado.
Yeah.
Just got to put a knockback to knock down in that thing so not everybody's flying around the room. Yo!
Hey. But it's the same in the end with the fall of...
City of Heroes reference.
Which...
Sorry, Chad. We're just we're having like a total side nerd right on top of what you're saying. Sorry.
What was it though? I missed it.
I said, yeah, psychic tornado. You just got to put a little knockback to knock down enhancement in that. And Ben said, do it, Ben.
City of Heroes reference.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it was a City of Heroes reference. Nobody would get except us.
We need to get some City of Heroes people in our audience so that someone can start appreciating you two and your fucking shenanigans.
Hey, there you go. What a novel idea.
The Destiny thing also kind of comes up again when Calanthe tries to pass off a fake Ciri to Geralt, in the kingdom. You could argue that the kind of kingdom falls as a result of her trying to pull one over on Destiny again. I don't recall exactly how clearly that's played out in terms of whether it is the exact cause or not, but it certainly could be argued.
Yeah, and you bring up a really good point because I think what's cool, and I was just thinking about this as we were talking about it, the way they handle Destiny in this particular property is it's very much like karma. It's like if you don't follow the destiny, or you try to go against it, or you disobey it, you will be destroyed, or you will have misfortune or bad luck, and I really dug that a lot. It's that idea of, that karmic idea of like, this is going to come back to haunt you, was very present in that interpretation of destiny, which I liked. I liked that it had multiple dimensions and it wasn't just like, this is your destiny, that's it, and everybody's like, oh, okay. They really took the time to flesh it out more, and I really appreciated that.
Yeah, I don't know if it was intentional or not, but what comes to mind is if you think about pre-literate society where it's all oral storytelling and, there's nothing other than kind of like animal fat kind of torches or candles at night. Everything is scary at night and you have all these, monster mythologies that come out of it. And you could kind of see how sticking to your word and bad luck will happen if you don't stick to your word would be a major part of the societal fabric. And so it kind of makes a lot of sense that it would be
Definitely.
a major thread or theme in these societies. And I'm curious if it's intentional that the show, runners picked up on that.
I'd be curious to know that too.
So that episode was also the one where Yen is fighting that warlock assassin dude, which was kind of an interesting thing. It's especially like culminating in the burial of the baby on the beach, which was pretty heavy.
Yeah.
And that crazy spider crab creature was really intense, man.
Straight out of Starship Troopers.
Yeah, right.
Totally.
Regardless of how interesting that warlock battle was, like heavy-handed or not, it seemed like burying the baby on the beach was a major component of Yen wanting to gain back her fertility in the next episode with the Djinn.
Let's move on to 5. My least favorite. Hated it. Next, episode 6.
Hated it.
Hated it.
Yeah, basically Yen and Geralt are now an item as a result of episode 5.
Yep. There's a Djinn, 3 wishes. She tries to have a baby. They hook up. Castle falls apart. Weird dialogue. That's it.
Eyes Wide Shut orgy. The Djinn thing was another
Eyes Wide
example.
Shut orgy. Yes.
The Djinn is another example, along with the Frog Prince stuff, of kind of like reasonably well-known mythologies that get sucked into this, which was interesting. I dug it.
Yeah, and I did too. I mean, I like the way that they portrayed the Djinn because when he pulled up that bottle, I was like, if anything even remotely resembling Will Smith pops out of that stupid bottle, I am going to smash the TV and never watch this show again.
Fair enough. And maybe that's why you hated that episode, is because you thought for a moment that was going to happen, so it just kind of deflated the whole thing. Do you want to talk about that one at all, Benny?
No, not so much, but it is kind of important to the story because the scenario with the Djinn and Geralt's wish to save her is what cements their relationship.
I thought he picked up on what she wanted, and I thought his wish was to impregnate her, and that's why they bang. But I think I was looking a little too deeply into it.
No, I think that's I'm not. I can't remember exactly what it is, but I think he made 3 wishes, and part of it was that he wanted to have a child with Yennefer.
Okay, interesting.
Not that it plays out that way, because it's important to the story because, he and Yen are sort of like, and Ciri become like a sort of little surrogate family. So that's how it ends up playing out. But that's
Gotcha.
There's, I think even Yennefer talks about it in one of the later, in the episode with the dragon, where, she's pissed off because she doesn't know if she really feels for Geralt or if it's just the spell that the Djinn put on them.
Right.
So there's all this sort of conflict with that, and it's like part of, kind of a thorn in their relationship.
Yeah.
Right, but he does say that he made the wish to save her life, and it was the wish of them being together. I don't think it was that they would have a baby together necessarily, but it was just that they would be together, because then she gets pissed at him in episode 6 about that very, very thing. So
yeah, that's the main part of it.
I don't know if that clarifies or confuses more, but whatever. Yeah,
I liked how it was like episode 5, Yen and Geralt fall in love. Episode 6, middle school, Yen and Geralt break up. It's like a 5-minute relationship. Like, I get there were time jumps and stuff there, but I just thought it was quite humorous how quickly things turned around for them.
Yeah.
So yeah, next up is the dragon episode. What did you think of that one, Ben?
I think overall that was my favorite episode. And I mean, I like that it does tie into the story at large, but it's kind of self-contained, and it really sort of reminded me of like a quest that you might go on in the game. You know what I mean? It had that.
I was just thinking that. Yeah.
So all those things really, the guy that played the Gold Dragon, he was awesome. I don't know what his name was. I'm slacking, of course, because Kev is not here to correct me. We'll know all about him and everything that he's done ever.
Yeah, I liked it too. I I kind of got a little bit of like fuck off with the like the two, Amazon women or whatever, the two black muscle
the bodyguards
for hire ladies that the golden dragon dude seemed to have, and the bard's obsession with them was kind of like it was like funny, but it was kind of like almost dick jokey, and so I kind of didn't really dig it. But then when they were like, he's so beautiful, I was like, what the fuck? And then it turns out that he was the dragon, and so the punchline kind of made it all work for me in that sense.
Yeah,
it was cool. I suppose I didn't really see them coming back in terms of the cliffs thing,
right. Yeah, no, I mean, I was on the motorcycle with you basically for the entire episode until the end of it. Now that I know what happens, of course, it makes sense. But
yeah.
Just touching on Jaskier and his sort of cringeworthy behavior. It's very in character. It's very Jaskier. It's not anything out of character or anything that would be, like what Kev was talking about earlier, like, whether it's like part of the story or whether it's something they created to make the show more poppy or whatever. But
yeah,
it's very, very in character for Jaskier.
Oh, he grew on me throughout. Like at first he was very, very, very annoying, but I suppose that's partially the point. And he did a great job of being annoying, but as time went on, like he was quite enjoyable. And the fact that we touched on this earlier, but the fact that his, busking in pubs gave Geralt his reputation back it was quite funny. Like he's totally the sidekick and Geralt's just like, fuck off, dude. But the guy just keeps sticking around.
Yeah.
Are you talking? Yeah, go ahead.
We're just talking about Jaskier, but I love how like when he's introduced and he's playing in that pub and he's like trying to figure out a song and he ends up singing something about abortion.
Yeah,
somebody in the audience goes,
like,
"Abort yourself."
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, it was funny, man.
So he needs Geralt just as much as Geralt needs him for his reputation.
Yeah,
definitely. They're like the unlikely buddy cop duo.
They definitely have the buddy cop thing. Definitely.
He's a wacky cut up. He's the strong silent type. It's The Witcher.
So what'd you think of the dragon episode, Kev?
I want to see that show.
I would watch that.
Oh, I thought you guys were already talking about that. That was my dream. Oh, gotcha. I enjoyed 6. I was like, I really like Ron Cook, the guy that played Borch. He was in
Well, you were away.
we just predicted this.
While you were away, Ben was like, I can't remember the guy who played the dragon. I was like, don't worry, Kev will come back and tell us all about him.
Ron Borch was in a BBC show called Mr. Selfridge, which actually starred Jeremy Piven, about the guy that kind of created the idea of a department store back in the early part of the 1900s. And he was really great in that. So I enjoyed him. He's a great actor. So it was enjoyable to see him as that character. It was kind of it was a very like Tough Mudder meets Ninja Warrior kind of feel to the episode.
With some glamping.
Like, who's going to make it to the top first? And then the knight that's with Yennefer, like, Jaskier goes to take a leak in the woods and get berries for the two babes. And then there's like a weird creature there and he comes out and then the knight's just like, I'll kill him. And then he just overdoes it, man, by a factor of 20. He just keeps chopping.
Everyone's just standing there watching him.
Yeah, he keeps chopping at the corpse, and I was glad that everybody was standing there watching because they were feeling how I was feeling. I was like, this is ridiculous. So, it was a good episode. It wasn't. You could say that it's not as cool as some of the other episodes, but the wrap up, there was so much in the wrap up that it really just tied the whole story together in a really beautiful way. The whole idea of the gold dragon, Borch being the gold dragon. I loved the look of the dragons, that they didn't look like typical Game of Thronesy Lord of the Ringsy kind of dragons. So I dug that a lot. And I like, how he gave the dwarves the dragon teeth and all of that stuff. It was a lot of cool things going on there. It was cool. It was a fun episode. And it was totally middle school, dude. Definitely middle school.
With the breakup.
We're breaking up. Yes, we're breaking. Oh my God. I'm so tired from liking my boyfriend. It was great. So let's move on to 7 and 8 so we can keep the dream alive.
Yeah. So it seems like a lot of these episodes are, the short story-ish stuff that was spoken about, and the last couple episodes are the big wrap / cliffhanger for the next season kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this episode was very much like Yennifer going, visiting her high school again after 20 years. Just keeping in Chad's theme of, sort of relating it to everybody growing up. So she goes back to high school and there's a bunch of freshmen there and she's like, we used to smoke weed here, whatever, take acid. And the girls are like, oh my God. And then, one of them has a burnt face, must be the daughter of, what's his face? Ashford from The Expanse. And then, one of the kids is like a rich girl and she's like, oh my God, my parents paid for me to go here. And it's like, oh wow, we never heard that before ever in the world. So I was kind of like, wow.
I love that you just called her Yennifer.
Did I call her Yennifer?
Well, it fits with the middle school
it fit
trope.
with the going back to
sure.
school thing. Yeah, exactly.
It does. It does fit with that. So Yennifer, so henceforth she'll be Yennifer in this episode because we're in high school. So yeah, the rich kid is like this, and then Jennifer's like,
Oh my God, now they're populating this place with rich girls that are buying their way in. That's terrible.
and then she goes and sees Marigold, and Marigold's like, you're like this and blah, 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 and that. And it's like, okay. And then, it's really, this is all leading up to like everybody voting in the council, and I can't remember if that head guy of the council is Tony Todd or not, but I'm sure you guys are like, who the hell is he talking about?
You going to tell us about his black and white debut?
I don't know, but what was he in?
I already wish I had that 5 minutes of my life back.
You are freaking out, man. I think that was a fantastic synopsis, and Mean Girls 2 at Rivendell.
Very much.
I don't know what to say.
Hang on.
You said it.
Sorry,
man.
I was looking up the Tony Todd thing. What did you say? It's Mean Girls at Rivendell?
Mean Girls 2.
Yes.
Rivendell.
Oh my God, that is perfect, man. Mean Girls 2, Hogwarts Year 3.
Yeah, that's
or
it.
whatever.
The Hufflepuff strikes back. I like that synopsis because the Yen going back to school, blah blah, is interesting enough, but it's really all just a lead up to that confrontation around the table with the mages, where Yen and her beliefs of going and fighting against fucking emo Hitler get shot down. So
Emo Hitler, what?
yeah, the like dude dressed in black who wants to kill everybody and like take over the world via his blitzkrieg tactics. Emo Hitler.
Yeah, the MILF Guardian.
You mean the MILF Guardian?
MILF Guardian.
I've said that like 10 times
MILF
this
guard.
episode. Yeah, the MILF Guard.
What are you looking up another joke or something?
I'm trying to look up this Tony. I'm trying to see if that guy is Tony Todd, but I can't find it anywhere. So it doesn't matter.
And that's it, folks. We are hung up on Tony Todd.
Yeah.
The show comes to a grinding halt.
We're going to stop there and come back next week with the answer to that burning question.
We're going to come back next week and only talk about one episode of The Witcher because we got almost all the way there.
Let's just let's move on to.
Well, hang on, hold on. In traditional Arnie style, officially as of right now, I am petitioning that there is now such thing as an ejection death, where you have pulled the eject fucking seat in your motorcycle and have flown off into a fucking Wikipedia hole and left our episode, and you are fucking dead, my friend.
Okay, so that's pretty much me every episode. So great.
Well, it seems like every episode you do pull the eject handle. So before we move on to episode 8, episode 7 was the one where the queen tries to pass off a fake Ciri to Witcher and kind of gets that ball rolling. And then Ciri screams her way out of being assaulted at the end with the dudes trying to like beat her up in the woods or whatever.
Yes.
Because her kind of weird lion powers are only revealed a couple of times in the series, and that was the big one, I think, right?
One of them, yeah. When she's initially trying to get away, she does it from emo Hitler.
Oh yeah.
She does the scream thing, and like fucking like cliff edge breaks off, and yeah, she like causes an earthquake essentially. I guess like a giant like tear in the earth opens up, and he can't continue to follow her.
Oh yeah, it was totally Force Awakens or whatever.
Yeah.
Yep, I forgot about that. Okay, anyways, episode 8, Witcher nearly dies, fighting weird zombie things.
Yeah, that was cool because we sort of touched on it already. We get the glimpse into Geralt's past with the, his quote mom and leaving him to be a Witcher, and
that was cool.
The fever dream. I really like the farmer. I like those weird zombie creatures that came out of the ground. The farmer was cool.
I kind of want to like take that sequence and like intercut the zombie fight with scenes from Thriller for some reason. That just came to mind. I think that would make a pretty good YouTube video.
Like they all should have like the fight should have just broken off into like a really like a wide pan shot choreographed dance with
Fuck yeah, dude. Henry Cavill would kill a dance sequence, a Michael Jackson Thriller dance sequence.
They should have made a special Witcher costume that had lots of like zippers. It already had a bunch of studs, which is fine, but it just needed some zippers.
Absolutely, I love it. Totally on board.
Love it. Yeah, definitely.
I kind of scrubbed through this episode today just to kind of refresh my memory, and I forgot just how much of it is that battle, the mage battle. It's like 3/4 of the episode.
Yeah,
it was cool for sure.
I feel like 7 and 8 were really starting to cram, like trying to kind of wrap the story up, which, I think they did well with it, but there's definitely a lot to take in, especially in episode 8. There's just, the breakdown of the different things that are going on are definitely, it's not hard to follow. It's just, there's a lot to chew on.
Yeah. You could even kind of say that like the teenage romance, episode 5, episode 6, like starting to date, stopping to date, is kind of the beginning of that kind of cramming of information into the second half of the season. So I agree it wasn't like impossible to follow, but it was definitely like, a very rich story the last few episodes for sure.
I feel like they did a really good job of cramming a lot into one episode. One of the things about streaming and Westworld, when we were going through Westworld last week, as I was watching the episodes, the length of the episodes in Westworld would change as needed to tell the story. And that's a very like rest of the world format, like certainly in the UK and Europe, they do that where it's like, when you go and watch Sherlock, it's like if the episode's 55 minutes, it's 55 minutes. If it's an hour and 20 minutes, it's an hour and 20 minutes. Like they don't stick to a standard TV radio format that's sort of built around advertising and all that sort of thing. So, I really dug that in Westworld when they would just let the episode be as long as they needed to tell the story. And I kind of wish they had done that in episode 8. It was sort of my long-winded runaround. Because, yeah, you're right. They did try to cram a lot in there. And, it was the wrap-up of the season. They could have made this one an hour and a half. They should have.
Yeah.
But my God, the production values have got to be high on this show. The armor, the bullshit, the castles. My God, it must have. I mean, that would have been like another, a couple of $1 million to extend it that much longer. So I sort of get it both ways. But I think they did an admirable job of, focusing on the right story points to move it forward in a good way without it feeling too cramped. Like it definitely was cramped, but I think they did a good job of it.
It felt a little frantic, but they certainly didn't leave any loose ends. It seemed to move things along exactly where they should be.
Yeah. And I suppose of all the episodes to feel frantic, the one with a rather frantic battle, it kind of fits tonally. So
yeah,
I really enjoyed the. Speaking of the battle, I really enjoyed the willingness to really push the magic. It seems so rare that any of these fantasy style shows are willing to go there with the magical stuff. That I enjoyed the kind of mage battle kind of catapult thing where, you know, the baddies were like sacrificing one mage at a time kind of thing. Like it was quite cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. Very, very cool. I like how they did that as well.
Yeah, magic was it's the majority of what was going on in that battle was like, you know, the mages like kind of pulling out their bags of tricks, and you know, so it was like a very prominent part of the battle. Whereas, you know, usually it's just lots of wide shots of guys in armor, you know, clanking swords together and, you know, chopping limbs off and stuff. Where, you know, there was some of that, but there was, you know, we're like, you know, Peter Jackson seemed quite unwilling to put much magic on screen. This is like the exact opposite.
Yeah, and I dig it, like you guys said. I think it's really, really cool. And also that you get to see, you know, the mages' weaknesses and see them get defeated and see them die. I mean, oftentimes we see these sort of mage sorcerers, sorceresses in these films and TV shows, and it's like they're so all powerful. It's like nothing ever happens to them, you know. So this one was very
like a Gandalf or something.
Yeah, or like a Saruman, you know. Like it was cool to see them kind of get their asses kicked a little bit, you know.
Yeah. And other than like a Harry Potter, I can't think of anything that has been as magic heavy. And obviously, Harry Potter is more, you know, of a young adult novel style thing. So this is interesting from like, you know, a more of an adult content perspective to see them willing to go there.
Yes,
because we didn't touch on it, or I didn't touch on it, I should say, early on. But like I said, I wasn't super into fantasy, but A Wizard of Earthsea by Ursula Le Guin is a series I really, really like, and similarly, it's very magic heavy. So it was nice to see kind of a non-kiddie kind of movie, or, you know, a non-kiddie piece of filmmaking relating to the magical stuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
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 I mean, that basically brings us to the end, doesn't it?
More or less, yeah. I would quickly mention that I'm going to blow this here because I can't think of the name of any of the characters, but the sword fight between emo Hitler and the dude that had like the never-ending.
Oh, Tommy Two Knives or whatever his name is?
Sword drive. Yeah.
Yeah, the Prince of Persia, dude.
There you go, Prince of Persia. That was a pretty good fight.
That was a good fight.
Really good. Yes, agree. Yeah, he was cool, Ben. I'm glad you brought that up. I loved also in 8 the various different methods that they used, and it also showed how all the mages were different in terms of like their sort of concentration. Like, what's her face? Is it Tessia? Am I thinking of that right?
Tessia, the teacher?
No, not Tessia, not Marigold.
Triss Marigold.
Yeah, Triss is what I'm like. It was all about like, you know, the poison mushrooms and the vines on the gate. You know, like
right, yes.
That was very cool.
Like in tune with nature magic.
Exactly, and I really dug how they were utilizing the blue meth from Breaking Bad and putting it in bottles and making it explode.
Shit, yeah,
yo.
You know they had Jesse Pinkman in the back,
dude. Again, it all comes back to Pinkman, dude. Pinkman was in the back, like, yo, Mr. White, yo.
I saw like a little video. Evidently, the blue fucking meth stuff is like a metal that's anti-magic or something. You could probably speak better to this than I could, Ben. Like, you could craft stuff from it and like.
No idea.
Is it in the game where like you can make shit that's like anti-magic or something?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't really concentrate on crafting stuff very much.
I just saw something that was like, you know, like it was a picture of handcuffs made out of that metal and put on a wizard's wrists, and like the wizard started getting like a, you know, black veiny kind of gonna die reaction to it. So I just thought it was fucking pixie dust that they were throwing around and blowing like pop rocks, you know. I didn't fucking pay too much attention to it, but evidently there's a lot of lore there.
No, they had Heisenberg in the back of the castle.
Yeah, exactly. Your joke's way better than my half-assed attempt to bring some lore into the show, so I'm dead again.
Yeah, that was pretty bad. How you ruined my joke there. That was great.
So that's why Nilfgaard was attacking, because they wanted the meth.
Yeah, Nilfgaard
It's a turf
wanted
war.
the meth, man, because they have a lot of soldiers and they need to keep them motivated. So best way to do that, blue meth, man. Nothing like the purist. What's her face or what's his face was like goes into the dungeon. The basement of that keep and was like, we need an advantage over Nilfgaard's soldiers. And there's Heisenberg. Let's cook. He's a man of few words. He just says, let's cook. Done.
Much like Geralt,
Exactly, man.
And so the big reveal in season 2 is Giancarlo Esposito is going to bring his character back and take over he's the Nilfgaardian king.
Totally. And Walter White is going to be Geralt's sidekick.
Yeah.
Taking over for the bard.
There's kind of a parallel between Jaskier and Geralt and Pinkman and White.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Because Jaskier's he is essentially talking about fat stacks all the time.
No, he is.
He's just talking about coin. The words are different, but he is Pinkman. I want him to tear all the skin off of his head, and I want it to be Pinkman underneath.
Is this like the Mission Impossible peeling off the mask, or is it the 2 weeks Total Recall robot face thing?
I'm going to go with 2 weeks Total Recall robot face.
I like it. So,
yeah.
To segue back to the show, where we left off was Arya Stark and the Hound were about to team up and go off on their adventure together.
Right.
Yes, they were.
Cliffhanger to Geralt and Hey Siri teaming up.
So where do you think that goes?
Where do I think that goes?
I'm not even going to posit
Well, you mentioned earlier that, and I can't recall if in the show this season they touch on her as a surrogate daughter to both Geralt and Yennefer, but that would make a lot of sense. And Ciri at the end has a vision of Geralt calling out for Yennefer, so it kind of is pretty strong-handed in getting those three characters together as the three main threads. As far as where it goes, she's the quote-unquote chosen one that's going to fuck up emo Hitler, I reckon, but I don't know how. I thought that all the talk of the spheres and stuff was interesting, but evidently that's more creation myth than prophecy or something. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I'm very curious to see where it goes. That was a really bad attempt at telling you where it goes.
It's all very interesting and perhaps not inaccurate. I was thinking less high level though, and more just direct,
where they go,
the direct relationship between Ciri and I'm not. Do you guys care? I mean, it's public knowledge, but I won't say anything if you don't want to. But
yeah, I'd rather not. I think
no. Leave it. Leave that in the bag. I would prefer it.
All right. Okay. It's not a major plot point. It's just all right. I'll shut up then.
But it definitely had the Umbrella Academy thing where the fucking princess from episode 1 and Ciri or Ciri's mom or whatever being born in that certain way made them genetically whatever. Am I remembering that wrong, or did it not have the Umbrella Academy thing?
Yeah, the eclipse. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Because they talk about that in episode 1. That's why Stragaboard or Strangaboard or I can mangle his name aboard is Dusseldorf. Anyway, blah blah blah, whatever. We I don't know. I don't really want to theorize about where this goes. If you guys want to, you can.
Nuggets.
I can't. Well, I mean, I know, but I'll just keep my mouth shut.
No, you're in my position, man. You're in the expanse.
All right, so let's move on to the Nuggets sections.
Nuggets. So I'll go first because I'm sure you all have nuggets. Is it Jaskier? Is that how you pronounce his name?
Yeah, Jaskier.
I was going to chime in earlier with this, but evidently Jaskier directly translates to the word buttercup in English, which is perfect. But in the book translation, they went with dandelion. So I think that's why he's known as Dandelion. But I love the fact that his actual name is essentially Buttercup, because he is such a fucking buttercup.
He really is.
And I love to hate him.
Nice. What else you got in your
Oh, you guys don't have any
your 6-piece nuggets?
my 6-piece? There's only 3 different shapes though.
Ooh.
Just that cool YouTube video that I'll put it in the show notes where Henry Cavill talks about Geralt's sword and some of the sword fighting stuff.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah,
I'd love to watch that.
I'll share that up. And that's it.
I have just one, and it's that the showrunner for this is also the showrunner for Umbrella Academy and The Defenders and Daredevil, and that ilk that we like. So no surprise that this is, it's good.
Yeah, it's really surprising to hear that she was co-producing Umbrella Academy. That's quite a pedigree.
Yeah, it really is. And on her Wikipedia page, it mentions that she will be the showrunner for the next season, which is actually titled The Witcher: Nightmare of the Wolf. So
Yeah, okay.
who knows? Maybe they'll change it, but that's what we got coming up.
Nice. Shall we move on to ratings, or do you have any nuggets, Benny?
I don't compete in the nugget section.
Oh, a purist.
I thought that was your thing, so I'm trying not to step on your toes.
I thought so too, but Kev is Michael Flatley Irish dancing all over my feet.
I love how it's become a debate every single episode now about the Nuggets section. There's a big deal there. It's important.
It's very important.
I've been asking permission to even speak during it. This time I didn't.
Yeah.
Meow.
Pew, pew. I would be very curious to hear Benny's rating on this one first, if that's acceptable.
Agree.
Sure. This is a show, so it gets a B+ from me.
Nice.
Yeah, it's not like, it's just a good romp. It's good fun, great action, great story. It's not super cerebral like something like Westworld is, but I found it was very entertaining and a lot of fun to watch. So there you go.
Yeah. Who's next?
I'll go. Very similar. As I mentioned a minute ago, I was super interested to see actual magic as opposed to a Game of Thrones or a Lord of the Rings. Henry Cavill killed it, and the rest of the cast was quite solid. Also, as I mentioned before, the mythology tie-ins were great, and they did a great job of kind of setting up for the ongoing show. And I stumbled across a little anecdote that the showrunner says that she's got plans for 7 seasons. So I was like, fuck, all right, there you go.
Whoa, nice. I like that.
Plenty of source material. So
Yeah. So if the fans can keep it going, I think that this kind of has a chance to be the fantasy equivalent of The Expanse, with like the ongoing love and seasons every 18 months or whatever. So I think it's
yeah, I had a similar thought.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely. I mean, this and The Expanse, and hell, even I doubt Westworld will go on that long, but just The Expanse and this going on for that long is fantastic. The material's there, so why not?
Yeah, I feel like a Westworld's got at most 2 more seasons in it. It'll probably jump the shark if it goes much beyond that. But
yeah, it's like Man in the High Castle. It's like just end it after 4 seasons and be done with it already. It's like you told the story.
There's plenty of other content out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess like similar to The Expanse, I feel like this is another example of what the kind of new era of filmmaking can be, which is like niche content, potentially long form, and the creative control. So it's nice to see, what creators can make when they aren't given a whole bunch of studio notes and are given some time to kind of really, if they even get halfway through the 7 seasons, that's like a lot more than most shows in our past have ever gotten. So it's nice to see some new stuff taken off. As far as rating, yeah, I give it a solid B. So it's definitely enjoyable.
Wow, nice. It's a good rating for you.
I got to admit, I'm a little surprised.
I am too.
Yeah, I thought you were going to go A as well, Benny. So, but yeah.
Well,
I think like just to like say a tiny bit more on the B. Like I think it goes back to what I said at the beginning, which was I'm finding that doing this show is making me pay closer attention to think more about it. Like I definitely would have probably just not watched this just because of how many other millions of shows are out there. But I'm glad I did. So it's solid.
I'm glad I brought it up then.
Yeah, me too. Sorry, I interrupted you, Kev.
It's okay. May I continue?
You may.
I would have given it an A. The time jumping was enough to knock it back to a B, just a solid B.
Fair enough.
So excellent cast and, excellent production values. Like, you're there, man. You're in the world. They didn't skimp on anything visually. The effects are great. The story's great. The adaptations are good. I don't know how faithful they are to the books, but, Ben, you played the game and said that it's, very, very close, exactly close to the game. So, I really loved watching this whole thing. I can't wait to see more. I think the pool of lore is so deep on this. I can't wait to see more of this stuff, man. And I just wish, all of that said, I just wish that either they had put some indicators up on the screen or done a better job with the storytelling to indicate where we were time-wise in the story. Because I think that's probably its single drawback to me as a viewer. So that's why it gets a B from me. But otherwise, great. Absolutely go watch it.
Yeah, it's totally fair. The only other chime in I've got that I forgot to mention was you mentioned in the Expanse shows, Ben, that you're gonna ride the show and not really do the book thing and get ahead of it. And I feel the same for this. Like I'll just ride the show on this and not read the books. I think.
Yeah.
I think I'd rather just enjoy the unfolding of it rather than digging in.
Yeah. The only thing I may do is try to play the game if I can, but I doubt that's going to happen.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, it's really good. It's not like, I don't know. I feel like the combat system and all of that kind of thing kind of takes a backseat to the storytelling, and it's kind of, set up more like an elaborate choose your own adventure kind of a thing.
Mm.
Not that there isn't, which is I'm not saying that's a bad thing at all, and I'm not saying that the combat system or any of that is tripe. I'm just saying it's the important part of the game seems more to be like, talking to people in the world and, how your decisions play out, because it's all very important in that game. And you definitely spend a lot of time in dialogue trees, man. I almost got fatigued, to be honest. Like, I was just like, oh, for fuck's sake, can you just get on with it, man? Like, I want to get out and do something. But I mean, that's it was amazing. It was really good.
Sick.
Nice. Should we move on to deaths?
Yeah, I just had the traditional Star Wars death.
You had two Star Wars deaths.
Did I?
Yeah, you brought it up again later.
Okay, I'm down with that.
And then I had the all new ejection death.
That was pretty good.
I'm really psyched to be the first person to have that kind of death. And then you died again in the end, sort of hijacking my joke and trying to bring more lore into the conversation, which is great. And that was about it. Benny didn't die.
Yeah, you're on a streak, Benny.
Yeah, you really are, dude. You are on point.
You know what it is. I'm playing it safe.
Okay.
I got to stick my neck out there a little bit, I think.
Yeah. You know what? You're right.
You guys are jumping out of the plane. I'm riding with it until it lands.
I like it. Yeah. Well, that makes the ejection metaphor even more apt for Kev then. He's like up front pulling the ripcord.
Oh yeah, dude. No doubt.
Yeah. That's good.
That's it. What are we talking about next week, guys?
Well,
'Cause
I was just going to say, since we don't know what we're talking about next week, I won't do my usual question to you, and we can just say goodbye to the folks at home. Before we do that, definitely wanted to give a shout out to a listener who left us a really good review on, I think it was iTunes, and he's an essential services driver. Said he listens to the show all the time, and that would be Omar El Paso. Anyway, Omar, thanks for leaving us the great review. So glad that we can keep you entertained while you're driving, man. You, like all of the other people that are working in the grocery stores and the Costcos and
hospitals.
Yeah, the hospitals, exactly. While everybody else is sheltered up, I can't thank you enough for sticking your neck out and doing that. I think about it every time I walk into the grocery store. And I know the economy is kind of limping along right now, and a huge part of what's keeping it going is drivers of any kind delivering goods all over this country, man. And I think that they're in many ways kind of unsung heroes, along with a lot of other people, but certainly for the keeping the economy alive, they're sort of the unsung heroes here. And I don't really think they ever get the recognition that they deserve, but they do a lot, man. And I just wanted to say thanks for that, man. So this show's for you, man. There's your shout out, bro.
Cheers. Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks for the awesome review. I'm glad we could entertain.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
I think, Ben, it's time to tell the fans, everybody at home, where that comes from, since you shared it with us, but we didn't even bother to talk about it the last week or two.
Yes, I did some research on my own and discovered that absolutely comes from Rocky 2.
All
Boom.
right. Is that the Russian one?
No, dude. That's the fourth one.
Oh, okay. I'm dead again, ladies and gentlemen.
I will break you. A death in the post show. Wow, that's a new one. I hold the record for the death in the first 15 seconds of the show. For
Rocky was never my jam, man. I mean, the original's good,
No.
but whatever.
Yeah, I get it. My dad was into him. He took me to see him when I was a kid, so I liked him well enough until they got to number 5. And I was like, this jumped the shark. And then got back on track later, but whatever.
I'd rather watch a Johnny 5 than Rocky 5.
Yeah, I agree. Oh, my God. Thanks for everybody that's been listening to the show, leaving us great reviews. We really appreciate it. We're building quite an audience, and we're very happy about that. So thank you to all of you. Stay in, stay safe, and we'll see you on another time.
See ya.
And that's going to wrap up this week's episode, folks. Next week, we're going to be talking about a mystery topic. Ooh. You can find the show notes for today's episode in your podcast app of choice or our website, ebd.fm/episodes/54. You can ask us questions using the Twitter hashtag AskEBD. You can find me at Mulverine on Twitter. You can find Ben at Jarhigo on Twitter. And you can find Chad at ChadNormal on Twitter. You can also follow us on Instagram at EBD Podcast, Facebook at EBD Podcast. You can also communicate with us via email, and that would be contact@ebd.fm. Is that right, Chad?
Yep.
And as always, as I did in the end of the show, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate it. A couple of great ways to support the show. You can subscribe and leave us a review. And you can also tell somebody to check out the show. Word of mouth is the best way to grow anything. So, again, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.